Hello, this is Ken Barron with the National Association, Black and White Men Together, another podcast on special elections and values. In recent special elections, the progressive values have been emphasized and in some cases allowing candidates to win. In Alaska, the winner supports abortion rights and, of course, understands, as you can imagine, up in that part of the country, understands climate change. Voters in Kansas decided to keep abortion legal in the state, rejecting an amendment. Since the fall of Roe versus Wade, it has been increasingly hard to see the once clear signs of a GOP advantage for the midterms. However, special congressional elections are low turnout affairs. They have a relatively high share of white voters in mostly rural districts that were not representatives of the country. But a special election to fill a House seat in New York district was won by Pat Ryan, who highlighted the Supreme Court's rulings on guns and abortion. His rival largely avoided the topic of abortion, focusing instead on day-to-day voter anxieties from crime and inflation. There have been 4 special House elections, at least since the decision, and Democrats have outperformed their expected margins in those elections. For example, Nebraska, 1st district, Democrats outperformed and their margin was 12 points. Minnesota, 1st district, margin plus 11. New York, 19th, I just talked about that. The district was up for Democrats by 6 points on the margin. And New York, 23rd, 9 points on the margin. And the Alaska one, which we can add now to it, Alaska's district, and up 13 for Democrats. So we should note also, in addition, Biden's 44% approval rating is up 6 points from July's record low, largely owed to independents. This was in a recent Gallup poll. Despite all of these trends, the top 3 issues voters cite in political polls are, first, economics, second, security, and third, women's. So there is still work to be done. Remember, there are at least 11 barriers to voting. Number 1, voter ID requirements. Election officials use false claims of rampant voter fraud to justify strict requirements like a photo ID. This is often aimed at suppressing the votes of people of color and younger votes. Laws requiring a physical street address discriminate against groups that are more likely to have a P.O. box address, such as Native Americans living on reservations. Next, the lack of language access. The English language requirements of the past may be gone, but voting rights groups regularly receive reports that local jurisdictions are not translating materials or offering language assistance as required by law, providing a persistent barrier to increase voting amongst language minorities in the Asian community and the Latino communities. In addition, voter roll purges. The names of deceased individuals or those with standing felony convictions, officials have taken indiscriminate purges of voter lists in recent years. They delete millions of eligible voters' names, often with a disproportionate impact on communities of color. Next, polling places closures or consolidations. Election officials have closed thousands of polling places, largely affecting communities of color. Lack of funding is next for the election. This inhibits the ability of localities to manage elections that ensure everyone's vote counts equally. Another one, provisional ballot requirements. Federal law allows voters whose eligibility is in question to use a provisional ballot to be counted once the voter is confirmed eligible. However, localities set their own rules on this. How about reduced early voting? States and localities have long used early voting to reduce election days crunch and open up the process to prospective voters bound by work or other commitments. Also, reduced voting hours. This can make voting less convenient and even impossible for many voters. Low-income and working-class people often have less freedom to arrive late or leave early from work. And then there's poorly trained poll workers. Poll workers need good training to follow the right policies, like properly checking IDs and more. And then participants, election administrators are counties' highly decentralized election system people, and the system itself has responsibility for managing elections to state and local administrators, some of them very partisan officials with a clear interest in election outcomes, favorable to their parties and their candidates. And then there's creation of at-large local offices to dilute minority votes. This occurs across a city or county, in contrast to the smaller district elections, which can often result in higher representation for people of color, since votes are not diluted by area-wide population. Quite a list, but given all this, in the current midterms, it's most imperative to vote in these elections. This is Ken Barron, asking you to subscribe, like, and comment on all our platforms. You can email us at nabwmt@mabwmt.org. Thank you.